This message is produced by truthfromgod.com, which is one of hundreds of messages that can be read, heard, and watched at truthfromgod.com. America does not need a restored Constitution. Published in the Battle Axe, Issue 112, May 1977. At the end of the 18th century, our forefathers adopted a national constitution that was to be a guideline for our government. Certain rights of the people were enumerated, as well as certain duties of the government. Today, that same constitution has been destroyed through perverted interpretations who now sit on the Supreme Court. A few examples of this annulment through redefinition are as follows. 1. Our forefathers did not believe that all were equal. Representation to the federal government was not based on one man, one vote, but was figured only on the number of free men, thus discarding the number of all others. 2. Our forefathers insisted upon freedom of religion and did not include This is covered in the message, Secret of the American Story. It is a matter of record that and members of driven from American communities. 3. Our forefathers were so divinely inspired that Congress was opened with prayer. The president and federal judges were sworn in by placing their hand upon the Holy Bible. Now, these things have been outlawed from the public schools. The federal government, usurping more power, now dictates the curriculum that is to be used in all local schools. The first step was evicting the Bible, and the next step was the complete control of all books used in the school. 4. Our forefathers stated there was to be freedom of speech and press. Today there is neither. I am presently in a federal prison because I dared to write and speak out against the tyranny of government. Control the entire news media and present only a perverted picture of actual events. In the name of freedom, they libel and slander all who speak the truth. They so muddy the water that Americans never see the real issues. 5. Our forefathers believed that a man had a right to privacy, and the Fourth Amendment was to guarantee freedom from the government seizing a man, his papers, or property without due process of law. Today, the IRS makes everyone bring in their papers so they can be searched and the victims or their property seized, and all this is without due process of law. Every person waives his Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights when he fills out and signs a 1040 tax return confession sheet as stated in numerous federal court cases. The current laws can only be obeyed by waiving constitutional rights, and who gives this a second thought or even cares? 6. Our forefathers believed that every man should have free access to the courts and be allowed to present his side. Today, the courts railroad the people that appear before them. In my own case, I was denied the assistance of counsel. I was not allowed to have any witnesses. The jury was packed with government employees, and there were no witnesses that ever testified that I had ever done anything wrong. All this was done in direct violation of the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, and if this was not blatant enough, the federal trial judge said, "The Constitution has no place in my courtroom." 7. Our forefathers stated that no man was to be subjected to cruel or unusual punishment, and that excessive bail could not be required. From my own experience, I can testify that this too is surreptitiously violated. I was charged with a misdemeanor offense, and the government demanded a $100,000 bond. Men are released on less bond who are facing capital murder charges. The government's whole intent was to shut me up by locking me away in jail. The violations of the Constitution are gross and daily. In reality, the United States Constitution no longer exists. There are some in our nation who seek to restore it, but their efforts will be ineffective and in vain. Our forefathers knew that what they drew up in the 18th century might not be adequate in the 20th or 21st century, so they outlined the process for amending it. Their goal was to begin a government that would be a blessing to their posterity. They knew that they were taking the first steps and laying the foundation stones. We must realize that the work began by them must be continued by us. We must go forth to the second, third, and fourth steps. We must climb higher than any people have ever dared to go. The 20th century has seen the rise of great problems that must be resolved. The whole governmental complex is collapsing under its own dead weight. The bureaucracy is a Frankenstein monster that is destroying its benefactor, we the people. What will deliver our nation? There is no hope for the future in the restoration of our 18th century Constitution. This would only be a step backward. We must go forward. Our need today is not more edicts flowing from the concept of the letter of the law, but we must have the living Spirit of God to fill men who will bring forth a law of justice. The need in America is for men of spirit to arise against the oppression of this controlled government that is contrary to all that our forefathers intended. Our nation was born because men went forth on their sublime mission to battle for the right. May the spirit that inflamed them be kindled in the hearts of our people today. We do not attempt to restore anything, but we will push boldly forward and upward into the 21st century. The N.E.W.S movement is not retrogression, but progression. We demand more for our people in the future. Peace and prosperity are to become a reality in the new America during the new age. The answer to all our present problems lies in the hearts of men being stirred up by God Almighty to act. A constitution is only a piece of paper that has no power of itself. Corrupt men are perverting it, and no amount of restoration will correct this situation. Papers do not change people, but people do change papers. It is not the time to restore the Constitution, but it is the time to rekindle the fire that burned in the hearts of free men 200 years ago. It is the time to refuse to bow the knee to tyrannical traitors who corrupt, pervert, and destroy. It is the time to arise and throw off their chains of slavish bondage. It is the time for a new nation in a new age, ushered in by new men filled with a new spirit. This is our need. We do not store a scrap of paper, but to arouse the dignity, pride, character, and heroic spirit that has lived throughout history, and only this revival will bring victory. This message is produced by truthfromgod.com, which is one of hundreds of messages that can be read, heard, and watched at truthfromgod.com.